Self-employed versus employee. Should we get into that?
Yeah, let's do that.
Okay.
Well, let me set up the legal, and then I'm
Please.
going to let you go through it. So, and this is going to ultimately impact, theoretically, CME setup. So think of there as three main ways to pay an employer or partner. So let's assume I come to one of you guys and want to trade, and we've agreed, forget what we call it, but I get a, $50,000 base, and I get 50% of my profits. There's a bunch of different ways to do that. One is 1099, another's a W-2 employee, and a third way may be a K-1. Now, the benefit of K-1 is if I'm trading a bunch of futures, my $50,000 salary, Phil's going to say, is a guaranteed payment, which is fancy for ordinary income because it's fixed. But my 50% of the upside, I can take 60/40 in, so I could effectively be at a blended rate lower than 39 and change percent, 39.6. So that's a big benefit to me, because I now have to trade the 60/40 treatment for the fact that I'm paying all my self-employment, which Phil will get into. The flip side of that is a 1099, which is great for the firm. The firm pays an amount to me. The firm takes a full deduction. There's no withholding. I don't have to pay anything. I take that all in as ordinary income, and I'm still stuck with self-employment. Now, some people like that because if I have a good accountant like Phil, he'll find me a bunch of deductions that if I was a W-2, I wouldn't get, right? But you have to actually be properly a 1099, which means you have to truly be independent. And a lot of people just say, oh, I'll just 1099 when the person's really an employee. And the risk is on the firm that they haven't withheld, because the third way is an employee. At your traditional, you're going to W-2 me for my salary, pay me my 50%, but it's going to effectively be a bonus, a formulaic bonus. What happens there is the firm pays half the self-employment. They cover that, and that's on top. They have to pay that. And then I, have to pay the other half. So when we're saying, if you sort of weigh that against 60/40 treatment, there's a certain knock-in level where I have to be making a certain amount of income where I want the 60/40 treatment because I'm trading that versus self-employment. So at high levels, you want the 60/40. At low levels, maybe you don't. But that's sort of setting up the three main ways. And now Phil can go a little more detail on self-employment.
Yeah, an employee is pretty straightforward. You get a W-2 that you pay Social Security of 7.65% up to $127,000, and then 1.9% after that. Over $250 Obamacare adds another 0.9%. Self-employed, you pay 15.3% up to $127,200, then 2.9% up to $250 if you're married, and then you add another 0.9%. So let's think of it that over $250 you're paying 3.8%, and I'll get back to that in a minute. That in terms of the employee versus independent contractor, and again, an independent contractor doesn't necessarily mean you're getting 60/40. It just means you're not an employee. But if you're a trading entity and you have traders and you're defining them as self-employed, that it's a pretty tough sell to the IRS unless that particular trader is trading for other people. The whole key is that, and again, as you can imagine, the IRS looks at it, they're going to default to the person should be an employee and not an independent contractor.
And the reason for that is they know they can go after the employer for the tax.
And the reason the employer would like the person as an independent contractor is because they don't have to pay the 7.65% employer portion of FICA. There's 20 guidelines that defines whether the particular trader is an employee or is a self-employed person. The theme throughout all of the 20 items is control. Do you control that person? And to the extent that you do control that person, then they're an employee. The IRS has also made it easy for people over the years who were categorized as self-employed, and let's say they've left the particular firm all of a sudden they're doing their taxes and they realize they're gonna pay twice as much as being self-employed as they would if they were employed, they can just fill out a form and give the entity's name and tax ID number and only pay the 7.65% instead of the 15.3%. As you can imagine, the IRS will contact the
He's
entity.
not gonna be all that happy
Yeah,
about that.
you know, and then you have to prove that, or the entity have to prove that the particular person was actually self-employed.
That's why